My name is Melissa Robinson, but subscribers can call me Missy. This is the 6th video I have made for this channel, and thus far I have begun each video with some sort of dramatics, maybe some silliness. And I was really struggling with how to begin this video. There was a lot of anxiety attached to it. And then I had a novel idea. What if I just introduced the video without a skit? And then I wrote a poem, so here's that.
A fish that lands upon the shore can look upon the flocks and herds. Some run, some fly, some amble by the fish upon the shore. A fish that finds herself on land may wish for hoof or wing to wend. Each thought a prick, a cruel trick, the fish she cannot breathe. The fish, impotent on the sand, aware of fins neath winged friends. The tide comes in, a fish can swim, the freedom of a fish's realm. She sings a song toward the sand, though will they, up there, understand? Perhaps.
I don't actually know anything about poetry, so I am blissfully unaware of how bad that was. As I said earlier, the making of this video caused me a lot of anxiety, and that poem was born of reminiscing and trying to think about what is it exactly that's kind of causing that anxiety. And a large reason why I have anxiety about this video in particular is the fact that I am painting a picture as a gift for someone who did not commission me to paint a picture for them. If you don't understand why that would cause anxiety, congratulations, you are not an overthinker. But it's complicated and vulnerable, so I don't know how in-depth I'm going to go. Anyways, as I said, this painting is meant to be a gift for a friend who is getting married, and I was told that hawks and swans were meaningful to the couple. And that is really the only prompt I have to go off of. So without further ado, here is my process. I think I'm gonna use this canvas. It was painted on previously. Back in like 2013, somewhere in there. Don't love it, so we are going to paint over it. I'm gonna get sketching.
Prior to this, I had looked up some reference photos of the birds, and in this sketch session, I am trying to take those references and create an interesting composition with the birds relating to each other in some way.
I'm feeling a little lost. The subject feels too broad to me. I feel like what I was sketching doesn't quite have any life to it, but if I can think a little bit more about the symbology and the feelings I want to portray, then maybe I can get somewhere and start to feel a little bit more inspired and a little bit more full of direction for how I want this piece to look. So I have this book about signs and symbols, and I am going to look through it to find what are some of the symbologies behind some of the birds, maybe look up some flower symbology, and try and incorporate some of those things.
From my book, I learned that the swan represents the spirit world, the eternal feminine, fidelity, and poetry. Peonies represent happiness in marriage and prosperity, and lungwort means thou art my life. I had to look up the hawk online, but it says that it represents change, clarity, protection, and inner wisdom. This additional information got my creative juices flowing, and I finally found a composition that I liked. I began by mixing some colors that I could use to cover up my previous painting. This first layer of paint did not need to fully conceal the old painting, since further layers would serve to do that. I just wanted a fresh start that would begin to take things in a new direction. Because of the themes of change, transformation, and spirituality, which also fit with the idea of this piece celebrating a marriage, I chose to use colors that evoked dawn or twilight with some ambiguity as to which it was. After covering the canvas with a wash of color, I then began with my new reference photos to block in the shapes of the birds and of the background. I ran out of battery, so my footage cuts short here in a second. Because my anxiety was heightened during this week, the next day when I walked into my studio, I struggled to focus on painting because of the mess I saw. So I took a few minutes to tidy up before getting to work. I find that when I am feeling overwhelmed or emotionally out of balance, that it is really important for me to be patient with myself. And some of this productive self-care can be really very helpful. It can feel like a bit of a reset or a fresh start. When at last I felt ready to get to work, I noticed that I needed to replenish some of the paints on my palette. Sometimes I will ignore dry or depleted paint on my palette, but I recognized that this day, not having my workflow interrupted by depleted supply of readily available color would be very helpful. I also refilled my solvent and I was ready to get to work. Once I began mixing color and actually painting, my anxiety melted away and I found myself getting lost in the process in the best way. Now you can see what I accomplished after my camera battery ran out. Landscapes are a weak spot for me, but the purposeful vagueness of the background here worked in my favor, and it also kept the focus where I wanted it to be. When I paint white, I find that I should always mix it with some color and only use it straight from the tube when adding the brightest highlights, and even then, it depends. It also helps while mixing to hold the palette knife or brush with a little color on it up to the canvas to see how the color will work with what's already there. And I had a lot of white to paint in this and decided that the swan with its ethereal beauty ought to be painted with cooler whites, while the hawk's straightforward energy meant that it was more suited to warm whites. After getting the birds mostly where I wanted them, I added the flowers. This was really important since without them, the hawk appears to be on the attack, which is really not what I was going for. These were meant to be peonies, but if they read more as roses in full bloom, it works out all right. They have much the same meaning. And because these details were so very small, it was difficult to get the flowers looking like the particular flowers that I had in mind. For instance, the swan is meant to be holding lungwort, but it's just basically vaguely floral blobs of paint. I had added a bit too much walnut oil to some of my paint, and this day I began by touching up some of the background which had dripped. When I paint with oils, I use this glass frame as a palette. And when the palette needs cleaning, all I have to do is take a razor and scrape it off. Today, I felt that a clean palette would suit me best. The final element to this painting would be some gold ribbon that ends up framing the birds. I had sketched out where this ribbon would be toward the beginning of the painting process by scratching the canvas with the paint on it with my palette knife, and this worked out very well. I could still clearly see where to put the ribbon as I painted this day. Compositionally, this ribbon serves a few purposes. First, it helps to frame the subjects of the painting, emphasizing the birds as it loops around them. Second, it guides the eye to where the action is taking place, but also around the painting. Finally, the two pieces of ribbon together form a shape which vaguely resembles an infinity symbol, which adds another layer of meaning. I chose gold not only because it would contrast nicely with the blues and purples of the background, but also because gold is another color with significance to the concept of marriage, traditionally as we practice it today. When painting this gold color, I found that the best approach was to do the midtones first and then go in with my darks and finally the highlights. Also, if you are interested in comparing my reference photo to the painting, I will throw up the reference here. I'm happy with the changes I made with the lighting, but I think I could have gotten the anatomy perhaps a little bit better. Next, you can compare my hawk with the reference photo. I will link both of these photos in the description. As a final touch, I felt that adding some stars to the deepest part of the sky would just add a little bit more balance to the overall piece. And then all that was left to do was to sign, which you would think would be simple enough, but I accidentally dotted my E instead of my I. So I had to go back after I remembered how to spell my own name and make a little correction. And with that done, we are ready for the reveal.
I was very pleased with how this artwork turned out. The lighting and many things that I was unsure about actually came together very nicely. I really enjoy the way that the underpainting that I didn't like kind of shows through a little bit, particularly in different lightings. I find that that gives an extra kind of dimension to the artwork, and I think that it is interesting and beautiful in its own way. Of course, I hope that the couple enjoys the painting aesthetically and that it is meaningful to them in the end. But even if they don't enjoy it aesthetically, I hope that the painting can at least be received as a heartfelt expression of celebration and encouragement as they move into this chapter of their lives.
If you have gotten this far into the video, thank you so much for watching. Please do hit that like button if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thanks again, and until next time, bye.